Between 2020 and 2022, U.S. import volumes reached levels no analysts predicted possible. Over 26 million shipping containers arrived in 2022 alone, each packed with goods retailers swore would sell forever. Big box chains expanded distribution networks, and they promised Wall Street that pandemic demand was permanent. Today, those promises have curdled into bankruptcy filings. At least 6 retail categories face collapse by 2026, crushed by inventory they cannot move, and carrying costs that compound daily. What hidden mechanisms turned the greatest import surge in history into a death sentence? This is the unraveling the industry buried, and its aftermath will echo through shuttered storefronts for years to come. After the Cold War ended, American retail discovered freedom on the water. Container ships became fixtures at West Coast ports, their hulls packed with affordable goods from Asian factories. By the 1990s and the early 2000s, middle-class families could furnish entire homes for what a single sofa once cost. Walmart expanded from regional discounter to global giant. Target transformed from mundane to aspirational. Home Depot sprawled across suburbs, aisles stocked deep with imports shipped in standardized steel boxes. The promise was simple: manufacturing moves to China, prices fall, consumers win. In 1985, a microwave cost $400. By 2005, that same appliance sold for under $50. Malcolm McLean's containerization revolution reached full maturity. 20-foot and 40-foot boxes moved seamlessly from factory to ship to store. Ports expanded. Distribution centers multiplied. Just-in-time inventory became gospel, celebrated as the pinnacle of efficiency. For a generation, the machine delivered. Retailers operated on thin margins, but volume compensated. A Target in Ohio could order precisely what it needed with lead times measured in weeks. Los Angeles and Long Beach processed over 17 million containers annually by 2019, handling 40% of U.S. imports. Software tracked every SKU, predicted demand, minimized waste. The American consumer, flush with cheap credit and falling prices, kept spending. Walking through a big box store in 2010 felt like abundance itself. Entire aisles of cookware, towering electronics displays, seasonal goods appearing with clockwork precision. Made in China tags were everywhere, but nobody minded. The trade-off seemed fair. Manufacturing jobs disappeared, but living costs dropped faster. Retail square footage nearly doubled between 1990 and 2019, reaching over 23 square feet per capita. The system that delivered it all seemed invincible, but beneath the abundance, cracks were forming. In 2008, when credit markets froze, container traffic briefly stuttered. Factories in Guangdong went dark for weeks. The disruption passed quickly, dismissed as an anomaly. Yet for supply chain managers, the warning was clear. The global machine that seemed so efficient was also fragile, requiring everything to work perfectly all the time. By the early 2010s, Chinese labor costs climbed faster than expected. Wages in coastal manufacturing hubs doubled between 2010 and 2015. Factories relocated inland or to Vietnam, adding complexity to supply chains optimized for single geographies. Occasional port slowdowns and labor disputes sent ripples through planning cycles. Industry analysts published cautious reports about over-reliance and just-in-time fragility. The warnings were noted and ignored. Meanwhile, e-commerce accelerated pressure. Amazon's expansion forced brick-and-mortar chains to match prices and speed, squeezing profits. Retailers cut costs everywhere: staffing, maintenance, any inventory buffer not absolutely essential. By 2019, bankruptcies had been climbing for years. Toys R Us collapsed in 2018. Sears limped toward liquidation. The culprit seemed obvious: online competition, changing habits, too much debt. But beneath surface explanations, deeper vulnerability grew. Trade tensions escalated. Tariffs appeared and vanished based on tweets. Retailers could not plan. Order extra before duties kick in or hold back hoping they are repealed. The calculus became impossible. For now, though, container ships kept arriving. The system held. The real test was still ahead. In March 2020, the collapse came fast. Factories across China went silent as COVID lockdowns spread. Container shipping costs began their meteoric rise from $2,000 to over $20,000 per container by late 2021, a tenfold increase that shattered every benchmark. Retailers watched their operating model disintegrate in real time. Factory shutdowns halted production of electronics, textiles, home goods. When production restarted, component shortages and worker absences kept output at 60% capacity. Container shortages followed. Ships stayed docked at congested American ports, creating scarcity feedback loops. By fall 2020, over 40 ships anchored offshore at Los Angeles. By early 2022, that number peaked above 100 vessels, each carrying millions in inventory that retailers needed but could not access. Delivery timelines stretched from weeks to months. Furniture ordered in January arrived in June. Electronics for back-to-school season showed up in November, missing sales windows entirely. Chassis shortages immobilized containers even after unloading. Warehouse workers quit. Trucking capacity evaporated. Every chain link broke simultaneously. Panic ordering amplified the disaster. Retailers terrified of empty shelves placed orders 2 and 3 times normal volumes. When goods finally arrived months late, they triggered secondary shortages. Shipping lines imposed premium charges. Smaller retailers could not afford to compete. In late 2021, supply chain snarls cost an estimated $350 billion in lost sales. Target and Walmart chartered private cargo ships. The government's response proved inadequate. By early 2022, costs normalized and backlogs cleared. The acute crisis ended, but the damage was permanent, and retailers' response would prove more catastrophic than the crisis itself. By late 2021, retailers made a fateful calculation. The shortages had been humiliating. Empty shelves during holidays, furious customers, billions in lost sales. Executives swore it would never happen again. The solution seemed obvious. Order everything, order early. What followed was spectacular mass delusion. Retailers ordered 2 times, sometimes 3 times historical volumes. Target's inventory jumped 43% year over year by spring 2022. Walmart's stock swelled to records. Home goods chains filled warehouses with furniture they were certain would sell. The logic felt sound. Stimulus checks had flooded accounts. Pandemic savings hit all-time highs. Work from home sparked a nesting boom. Why wouldn't it continue? One logistics director later described the mood. If you didn't order double your normal buy, you felt like you were falling behind. Everyone was convinced this was the new baseline. Credit was cheap. Lenders offered generous terms with deferred payments. Holding inventory seemed manageable when sales were strong. Industry publications fed the frenzy. Trade journals ran headlines about a retail renaissance. Conferences buzzed about permanently elevated spending. McKinsey predicted sustained demand through 2024. Wall Street upgraded retail stocks, praising aggressive inventory strategies. Nobody questioned whether pandemic patterns might be temporary. By mid-2022, containers from those massive orders began arriving. Distribution centers filled, then overflowed. Retailers leased temporary warehouse space at premium rates. The goods kept coming. One executive later admitted in a bankruptcy deposition. He said, "We thought we were geniuses. Every container felt like victory. We had no idea we were filling our own graves." The miscalculation was baked in. Orders placed in late 2021 assumed demand that had already peaked. Stimulus money was spent, savings were depleted, inflation eroded purchasing power. By the time merchandise arrived, customers had vanished. Inventory carrying costs were once manageable background noise, typically 15 to 25% annually, covering storage, insurance, depreciation, and opportunity cost. For decades, goods arrived and sold quickly. Between 2022 and 2024, that equation shattered. Interest rates tripled. Inventory aged. Carrying costs became screaming alarms retailers could not silence. The Federal Reserve rate hikes hit brutally. Borrowing costs, near 3% in 2021, climbed past 8% by late 2023, with some retailers facing effective rates above 10%. For chains carrying billions in financed inventory, the math turned lethal. A retailer holding $2 billion in merchandise now paid $200 million annually just in interest and carrying costs. Every month, goods sat unsold, value bled through depreciation. Tariff uncertainty paralyzed planning. Threats of new Chinese duties appeared and vanished. Retailers could not predict whether goods ordered today would face 10%, 25%, or no tariffs 6 months later. The uncertainty added risk premiums to every transaction. The markdown cascade began by late 2022. Initial 20% discounts moved nothing. Retailers cut deeper, 40%, 50%, 70%. Each markdown destroyed margin. Some sold goods for less than landed cost, losing money just to free cash and warehouse space. Working capital froze. Cash locked inside unsold goods should have funded payroll and debt service. Banks watching inventory age past 180 days tightened credit lines. Covenants were breached. Default clauses triggered penalties. Retailers could not sell fast enough to generate cash, but lenders demanded immediate repayment. Bed Bath & Beyond filed bankruptcy in April 2023. Crushed by $1.2 billion in inventory it could not liquidate. Tuesday morning followed. Court filings revealed the mechanism. Goods purchased on credit in 2022 were worth 30 to 40% less than owed, and monthly carrying costs exceeded total margins. One chief financial officer testified that they were paying 6 figures monthly on inventory worth less than they borrowed. There is no way out of that math. Even as inventory piled high, the customers' retailers needed simply disappeared. Inflation punished households between 2022 and 2024. Grocery bills climbed 20%. Rent consumed raises. When families chose between necessities and discretionary purchases, furniture lost every time. Consumer data told the story. Furniture sales dropped 8% in 2023, then another 6% in 2024. Apparel flatlined. Electronics cratered outside essential replacements. Meanwhile, experience spending surged. Travel bookings hit records. Restaurant reservations climbed. The pandemic nesting shift had reversed completely. Americans wanted memories, not merchandise. Credit card debt surpassed $1.2 trillion by mid-2024. Delinquencies climbed, especially among younger consumers. The spending cushion that fueled 2021 retail had evaporated. Generation Z and millennials pulled back hardest, prioritizing rent and experiences over possessions. Discount fatigue set in. When every store screamed 70% off, the signal lost meaning. Consumers learned to wait. Why buy now when deeper cuts might come next month? With warehouses clearly overflowing, shoppers knew retailers were desperate. They could afford patience. The resale market cannibalized new sales with brutal efficiency. Facebook Marketplace and OfferUp overflowed with barely used furniture from families liquidating pandemic purchases. Why pay even discounted retail when someone nearby sold the same item for a fraction? Even aggressive promotions failed. Extended financing, additional markdowns, bundled deals, nothing worked. The fundamental problem was simple. Consumers either did not want what retailers sold or could not afford it, even at distressed prices. 6 retail categories face extinction-level pressure today. Home goods chains stand at the edge. Bed Bath & Beyond is dead, its 900 stores liquidated. At Home and Big Lots teeter on the brink, both carrying inventory 40% above sustainable levels and debt exceeding market value. Furniture retailers face similar math. Ashley Furniture and Rooms to Go struggle with showroom leases they cannot afford and warehouses they cannot liquidate. Analysts project 3 major furniture chains will file bankruptcy before mid-2026. Discount retailers die slower, but just as certainly. Dollar General and Dollar Tree expanded aggressively during the pandemic, opening thousands of locations. Now they face higher costs, organized theft destroying thin margins, and customers buying less. Family Dollar closed over 1,000 locations since 2022. Department stores continue a decades-long decline toward oblivion. Macy's plans to close 150 locations by early 2026, roughly a third of remaining stores. Kohl's stock trades at 2010 levels. Both carry debt exceeding $6 billion while operating in a sector down 15% since 2019. Apparel chains face a crisis of relevance. Fast fashion saturation and changing values destroyed traditional economics. Gap closed over 350 stores between 2020 and 2024. Forever 21 emerged from bankruptcy as a shadow. Electronics retailers face Amazon's dominance. Best Buy survives as the last national chain, but margins compress yearly. For all 6 categories, the clock ticks. Each faces unique challenges, but none has found strategic answers to fundamental problems. Sarah managed retail for 17 years, rising from sales associate to district supervisor. In November 2024, corporate eliminated her position. 12 stores in her region would close by February. She says, "They told us inventory costs were unsustainable. We had warehouses full of furniture nobody wanted. The math just stopped working." Stories like Sarah's multiply nationwide. Retail employment dropped over 180,000 jobs between mid-2023 and late 2024. Projections suggest another 250,000 will vanish by end of 2026. These aren't statistics, they're families losing insurance, managers in their 50s facing unwelcoming job markets, communities watching tax bases crumble as anchors go dark. Drive through any suburb today and the wreckage is visible. Strip malls with 3 vacant storefronts, dead big boxes with weathered for lease signs. Parking lots where weeds push through cracked asphalt. The physical infrastructure collapses faster than developers can repurpose it. Small cities relying on retail sales tax face budget shortfalls. Fire departments defer purchases. Libraries cut hours. The middle-class dream retail once served has fractured. Families face shopping deserts as stores close unreplaced. The elderly lose convenient access. What's vanishing isn't just commerce, it's connection. For retailers still operating, survival means shrinking, fewer stores, smaller footprints, skeleton crews. The industry that once employed millions is contracting toward a minimal viable core. The optimism of 2021 now reads as tragedy. This isn't a cycle that will correct. This is structural collapse, the result of a model assuming infinite cheap imports and endless consumer credit. Today, America's retail corridors are lined with stores nobody wants. The parking lots are empty and the undercurrent threatens to reshape commerce for decades to come.